Welcome, friends, to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Guys and girls, you know the drill. We're two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Hey, tonight we have a treat for you. We have, we're going to be talking about Alex Murdaugh. Is it Alex Murdaugh? Is it Alex? What it is to me is now convict Murdaugh. So we don't care what we're calling him. He's now in the state penitentiary. He's a convict. We're going to talk about his life in prison. What's his day-to-day going to be looking like? And we have some fantastic guests. We got Connie and Anthony, Anthony Gangi from Tier Talk, and we also have a special guest coming from another YouTube channel. JumpsuityPablo will be joining us. He is a former inmate at this Kirkland State Correctional Facility. He was there and in other facilities in the state of South Carolina, and he's going to talk to us about his day-to-day, and it's going to give us a direct insight into Alex Murdaugh, the convict. It's going to give us a good look at what he is looking at day-to-day. Hey, but before we get into it, I want to say a special thank you to you, the Patreon supporters, the channel members, the subscribers, the replay viewers, the moderators, and all the people who send comments in the comment section and engage with Crime Time with DutyRon. You guys are what makes this a great place. And I give thanks and praise to not only God above, but to each and every one of you for being here. So thank you, thank you, thank you on behalf of Ed Wallace and DutyRon. And coincidentally, Saturday, because tomorrow is St. Paddy's Day. We're all Irish tomorrow. No matter who you are, we're all Irish. We got to take a break for tomorrow. There'll be a lot of celebrating and a lot of playing of the bagpipes. Ed Wallace is very active on his day, on St. Paddy's Day. So Saturday, we'll have a forensic Saturday with Ed Wallace. So we're looking forward to that. Hey, let's get into our video. This is just a little bit of coverage from Newsnation. I want to play this for you to set it up, what we're going to be talking about. And this is going to just put it all in perspective for us.
In the meantime, I want to bring in Larry Levine, who is, listen, he knows everything. He spent 10 years in multiple federal prisons at several different security levels. He's now the director of Wall Street Prison Consultants and Coaching, which trains people how to survive behind bars. So Larry, he's under around-the-clock surveillance, we hear, and he is segregated. He is now 7 days in. Can you tell me if he is even slightly settled, what stage he might be at, and what the process is for all the testing that he's going through right now?
Well, it's not like this guy came in off the street, because he was in the county jail for a substantial amount of time. So he kind of understands incarceration, but he's probably wondering, because he's in the dark. Yeah, they're going to test him, but he's wondering what's going to happen next. And remember, he's in a diagnostic and classification center. So they're running him through, you could bet, mental classification, psychological testing. They're doing the quickest physical known to man to make sure he is in whatever physical shape he's in. They're discussing with him his work history, what type of work that he may be able to do. So they're just running him through sort of the same tests over and over to see if he changes his story.
And but I have a question, Larry. Does he get to come out of his cell for, like, is it like a day trip for him to go to different parts of the jail, which, you know, when you're just dead with boredom, or do they come into his cell and do this? Is he stuck in that cell for meals and interviews and classification tests and all that until he gets that 1 hour of rec and maybe a shower?
Now, I mean, they lock the prison down at different points 24 hours a day. So if they really want to, they can grab him from his cell, take him out of the housing unit and take him over to psych or medical or something. So I don't think that he's in there all day long, but he'll have maybe an hour a day of free time that he can get out of his cell. The only difference is the guy's not in GP. He's not in general population. He's in protective custody. So I guess his new best friend is whatever cop happens to be on shift who's watching him. And it's a boring, lonely existence. If I was him, I would want to go into population, but he doesn't have a popular crime. Remember, this guy was a prosecutor too. His family were prosecutors. Good chance there's people in there with him that his family locked up, and they're looking for some payback.
Yep. I could see that. And he might have helped lock them up too, because he was a part-time prosecutor too. Larry Levine, as always, I love talking to you. Your knowledge is just fascinating. I can't wait to have you back. Thanks.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it from Larry Levine, the corrections expert. But I got one better. I got two people here that blow Larry away. I got Anthony Gangi from Tier Talk and Connie, Alleyne. I call her Alleyne because it's the easiest way for me to do it. Connie, Anthony, thank you so much for being here on Crime Time with DutyRon.
Thank you for having us, sir.
Hey, so you just saw that piece. We are going to be talking about convict Murdaugh, right? That's how I'm going to refer to him for the rest of the show. Does that sound good? He's
politically correct.
Yeah, he's a convict. So he's in the custody of the state, and we want to jump right into his initial intake. And Connie, Levine just touched on it a little bit there. He was not somebody off the street. He got sentenced. He was in a county jail, going back and forth for weeks and weeks and weeks for this long ass trial that we all sat through. And there was a bunch of,
oh, hell no.
We heard so much crap from this guy. It gave us, oh, hell no moments left and right. He robbed and stole. And, now he's convicted of murdering his son and his wife, which is, again, this is the most brutal thing a parent can do to his son, his wife, shot and killed, convicted. What happens when they take him from county custody? I'm going to show a little piece after you give us this little overview. When they take him out of that courthouse, he's in the jumpsuit. He's going into state custody. What's the process for this guy, Connie?
So from a medical and mental health perspective, any records, any information they may have attained when he was in county, that should follow him over, right? Because it's all about how do we make sure this individual is stable once they get into the system and they're starting their sentence, right? And that's really from the medical mental health perspective. So if we did any testing previously, we want that information with us. And even though we may have already done a psych assessment or we did a medical assessment, most likely they're going to do another one because he's coming into the system almost fresh. And we'll take the information we've previously gathered and try to make the best diagnosis that we can with whatever that we have. Sometimes we see the inconsistency in the story, whether, he gained weight, he lost weight, he's eating, he's not eating. Oh, he's mentally stable or he's not. Like, essentially, we need to assess that before having him actually be housed in wherever his final housing space is going to be. To make sure he's stable.
So Connie, again, I want to add Anthony back in. So this is, I'm showing him walking out from sentencing. He went in there a kind of husky guy, and it looks like he was lost quite a bit of weight there because he's real thin walking out of that courthouse. Again, like I said, the idea here is he's got 2 life sentences. He's in jail for the rest of his life. So they need to just figure out what's proper housing wise for him. And at this facility in Kirkland, it's built in 1975. It's an older facility. It holds 1,781 inmates. And by my research, 8,000 inmates a year go and get processed through this Kirkland State Prison in Columbia, South Carolina. That's a lot of prisoners. They all come through there it's like a clearinghouse, and they figure out what they're going to do and where they're best suited. Anthony, you are a corrections expert. You know about care and custody and what goes on here. Could you walk the audience through a little bit of what happens here with Murdaugh when he gets in there and he passes through medical?
Yeah, so once he gets sentenced, he's now going to belong to the state. So the longer he is in county jail, the state will have to pay the county. The amount to that could vary a day. It could be $35 a day to a lot more, depending on what it takes to care for Murdaugh. I don't know if he has any medical concerns or whatnot, but once he's sentenced, the state is going to look to want to get a hold of Murdaugh and get him into a state facility. So the first facility will be what Connie Connie led to, which is basically, I guess it's Kirkland. Kirkland seems to be what they call a central reception facility, which means that they get all the inmates from county, and then they have their team work to classify the inmate and to see what facility he would fit best in. Now, for an inmate like this, they're definitely going to look at, well, with all inmates, they're going to look at the amount of time they have to do, how violent the crime is, I mean, for him, the basic, his need for protection, because obviously he's going to be an inmate that's in protective custody. Once they do the review, could take about 45 days. I think that's what Kirkland averages, 45 days. Then they're going to look to ship the inmate out to the facility that best meets their needs. Now, it's going to be a max facility. Now, mind you, I believe Ron had said that there's 3 max facilities in this state. So if he has any medical concerns, whatever it is, they'll look to see if they could place him at a max facility that really is ideal for all his needs. But this is his adjustment time. Now, I know the gentleman before talked about that I don't know what popular crime meant. I didn't understand what that was, but he did say something related to him kind of knowing the jail. And that's a lot different than going to a prison, because prison, now you've been sentenced. Now you know you're here now. So for a lot of people, the transition from jail to prison always seems more permanent. So their mindset now is no longer on hope. Right. You know, this is real now. So I think there is a little shift in the mindset.
Right. You know, and look, Murdaugh is well-known. Convict Murdaugh is a well-known to the corrections community. These folks inside there, and I mean, I've seen videos from our guest when he comes on, Jumpsuit Pablo. He has Bill. That's his YouTube screen name.
Oh, that's the gentleman, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So Pablo, when he comes on with us, you're going to hear from him. Whereas the inmates are just like chomping at the bit. They can't wait for Daddy Murdaugh to get in there, because they know that he's a law guru and that he can possibly help them, maybe with some of the injustices that they face inside the facility, poor conditions and so forth. I watched a lot of his videos that he produced, because it gives me that mindset from the inside. And I don't have, I'm not privy to that. You guys worked behind the wall. I did not. All I did was go and pick prisoners up and bring them back to my jurisdiction. So I did have a little bit of insight, but not quite to what we get from Pablo. And when he comes on and joins us, I think he's going to give us a really great insight. And here, this is his photo of him when he came into Kirkland. They shaved the heads because they talk about lice concerns and health concerns. Is that something that you would sounds pretty standard, Connie? No?
No, we don't shave everyone's head. If there was a concern about lice, we actually have someone who would actually go through his head and check for lice. If there was an issue of a lice outbreak
at the county,
if there was a lice outbreak already in the facility, perhaps there may have been a concern that he may have had it, but it's not a standard procedure to shave off someone's head because of lice.
But, you know, and I looked at some of the reports, and before I forget this thought, I just want to say thank you to Teresa B. Thank you for the super sticker. Thank you to Bill Cannon at Police Off the Cuff and everybody that's in the chat. Bill sends a $20 super sticker. He's my good friend, Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. He just sent me that $20 super chat. You know what's going to happen tomorrow morning, Connie and Anthony? He's going to be like, hey, buddy, you owe me 20. So, we know how this goes with Bill, but thank you for the support. My thing is that I did hear and read some of the stories coming out of this facility, and Pablo will tell us when he joins us that is standard operating procedure at this facility. Every inmate that comes in there gets their head shaved, every one of them, and they're allowed to grow it back to a very certain certain length, but they can't let it grow out like a big mop.
Could be a secure. I mean, I've never heard of that before, but could also be a security measure as well. Obviously, I just find that weird, because if you have inmates that are religious, Rastafarian inmates, let's say, you're not going to be shaving their head. I've never heard that practice before, but again, I've only worked in my state.
Right. So New York, New Jersey, this tri-state, Connecticut tri-state area. You didn't give me a chance, Connie. Tri-state. So in the tri-state, it's not customary to do this because there's so many religious and different things that are kind of observed for the inmates, for their rights and so forth. Now, I can get this whole chat up in arms about rights of inmates. You know, we're going to get into conversations about cell phones and tablets and all kinds of craziness that happens with these inmates. I see YouTube and TikTok videos with inmates inside their cells, guys, inside their cells. Is this going on? Is Alex Murdaugh, is this convict Murdaugh going to be able to get a cell phone and his own private TV in his cell? Is this something that happens in these facilities? That remains to be seen. Anthony, do you see that in any of your facilities? I know Connie's shaking her head like,
well,
oh, hell no.
I have a thought on that. So if he goes into protective custody, if he's put in, I would assume he'll be put in like protective custody non-congregate, which means that he has no interactions with any other inmates. And that's everywhere. That includes when food is delivered. It's always through staff. So if he does wind up with a phone, you would definitely have to start looking at staff at that point, because he would have limited ability to connect with the other inmate population, or you would have to check those videos to see if they're being a little laxed in that procedure. But being in PC is going to limit his chance. Not saying he can't get it, but it's going to limit his chance to get contraband. So I would definitely look at staff first if that was the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Connie, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he has his rights, but the reality is that in that level of housing, chances of him getting access are slim. I mean, unless, you know, someone somewhere is complacent, or if in fact the power or the leverage of that his family has had for so many years has somehow seeped into the institution.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know, and that's a whole nother issue to speak about, you know, like how much contraband happened, you know, how many facilities we hear about these raids for contraband and making home, you know, jail-made shanks and so forth. South Carolina's had a history of that, and there's many documented videos of them trying to pull out these cell phones. And I think one of the deputy wardens or one of the wardens, there was a hit ordered by a cell phone from an inmate from inside against one of these guys. But I have our next guest coming in to the studio, Jumpsuit Pablo. As soon as he gives me the thumbs up, I'd like to add Pablo into the conversation. He is a YouTube and TikTok. Well, on TikTok, he's a sensation because he's got 400,000 subscribers on TikTok. But on YouTube, he's just starting out. So, Pablo, thank you for taking out the time this evening to hang out with Crime Time with DutyRon. We appreciate you. This is Anthony and Connie from Tier Talk.
Hi. Hey, nice to meet you.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Pablo, if you could quickly for the audience, there's going to be a lot of your folks and a lot of my folks who are interested in your background and history. I know that you and I had phone conversations over the last 2 days, and you know, you served 10 years in South Carolina State correctional facilities, various facilities. Armed robbery. It's you're pretty vocal about this on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a firm believer in that, you know, people can be rehabbed. It's not that, you know, you commit a crime and that you're finished. So you want to talk a little bit about your situation and how you got started on social?
Me personally, yeah, like you said, you know, I try to be pretty transparent about what my charges were, because I know nobody wants to support somebody with, you know, specifically, maybe more of the child predator type of charges. So I feel like I owe it to at least say what my charges are. So it was armed robbery when I was young, about 20 years old, just stupid decisions, but definitely learned my lesson the hard way. Got 10 years for that. Did about 9 of those 10 years in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. And while I was in there, you know, my way of getting through and doing time was just laughing, comedy, telling jokes. You know, I'm not the biggest or the toughest or the roughest. I'm just a guy who can help others pass their time by having a few laughs. And sometimes that's more important. So, you know, I just got encouraged by them and got encouraged by some of my old friends when I did get out to, you try to go on the internet, go to social media, and just do some comedy there. I didn't know anything about it because, I've been gone a long time, but I got on there and did it, and it just kind of took off, and it's been a fun ride, and I'm just trying to see where it'll take me. Hopefully, hopefully it's great.
I admire what you do, because you're not only getting on there and giving your perspective from an inmate standpoint, but you're also putting comedy into it, where you can have a conversation with people and it's not so sticky, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you did serve some of your 10 years at Kirkland State Correctional. My two guests that are here, one is a corrections expert executive, the other is a corrections expert on the medical side, and she runs the Civilian Corrections Academy. So Connie and Anthony are a wealth of information. When I talked to them, you were in the lobby and you were listening. I think we talked about the policy of shaving the heads of the inmates. You have a video on that. Do you want to talk just a little bit about that? Is that in fact the truth? Each inmate that comes into Kirkland gets the head shaved, and for what reason?
Yeah. So, that's not the policies in the county jails. But, once they round you up and take everyone to the state prison system, yes, everybody has to get their head shaved. I mean, when they'll take you to a whatever the nearest prison in that county is, where they're going around to the local county jails and grabbing everybody who's scheduled to go to state prison. They'll round everybody up on the bus and they'll take them to the nearest prison in that area for all those counties combined. You'll make a stop there, like a pit stop, bathroom break, get a little bag lunch, something like that. And they go ahead and shave everybody's hair. It's a little closer than it, once you get to prison and you're there, you don't got to get it, like Alex, you see, it's almost clean shaved. It's really close. And, once you get to your actual yard, if you want to fade or, something a little more stylish, you can do that. But yeah, once you get there, they do shave your head. They tell you that it's for lice, to cut down on the risk of lice spreading and hygiene purposes. Whether that's the whole truth or not, I don't know. I mean, for the women, they don't do that. They don't shave women's heads. They cut it, I believe, a good bit above shoulder length for the women. But, they say it's for lice. So, yeah, they do that to everybody in South Carolina.
Interesting. Anthony, you got anything on that?
I mean, I never heard the practice before. So, yeah, I mean, probably most likely they could say it's lice, saying it's related to medical, when technically it's probably security. So I guess the way to sell it is by pushing up it's a medical concern. But again, it wouldn't sell well if they just said it was for security. But how does that work with the inmates that are, let's say, Rastafarian, or inmates that have religion? Do they still get their head shaved?
Yeah, I heard you say that. Yeah, they do. And it's interesting because when I first came there, you weren't allowed to have facial hair either, except for a mustache, of course, still to a certain length. But you couldn't have any facial hair either. But there's a lot of Muslims. There's a big Muslim presence in South Carolina prisons. And I think they really pushed and I don't know how exactly they got it accomplished, but they really pushed for the right to be able to grow your beard, but yeah, they don't. I mean, as far as the Rastafarian with the dreadlocks, they still have to give them shaved. I mean, I know people have tried that. They probably weren't actually Rastafarian. They're just trying to find loopholes usually. But yeah, I mean, they shave everybody's heads. But a couple years in, they changed the policy to where you could grow a beard for Muslim purposes. Right. So, maybe that's something that could happen in the future as far as the dreadlocks.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting what happens outside of the New York metro area. It's different, down south. It might be different in the Midwest. We don't know, but this is invaluable inside information. I wanted to ask you too now, Pablo, about the cell phones and tablets and so forth. And you did a couple of shows. I have his YouTube channel linked in the description. So for those of you who are asking about his YouTube channel, all you have to do is go into the description of this video and you'll see there's a clickable link that'll take you over to Pablo's YouTube channel. After this live is over, you guys can go over and everybody is subscribed to his channel. As far as the cellular devices, tablets, a TV, you did a video with the guy with a TV. Can you talk just a little bit about that as it pertains to convict Murdaugh?
Yeah. Well, first off, with what is allowed, TVs have always been allowed since I went down. I came into the prison system and I got locked up in the county jail in 2013, but I went to the state prison officially in 2015. So ever since I've been there, you can buy a TV on the canteen commissary for about $200, a pretty basic TV that gets you basic channels. Anybody can do that, but you can't have your privileges to have that TV taken away if you get in trouble. As for tablets, that's not something, towards I believe 2020 is when they really started. They had state issued tablets that they give to the inmates. You can't get on the internet or anything with these tablets. It's just more for being able to make phone calls. So you can make those calls personally in your cell instead of people lining up waiting to use the phones that are out there in the public part of the cell. You can have video call visits because COVID, they stopped letting people come in and do personal visits for several years, about a year or two. So that's another reason they did the tablets. You can have video call visits.
Right.
And there's games on there, little movies, stuff like that, but it's all controlled by the state. They can't get on Facebook and stuff like that. So but as for the contraband cell phones, there's in South Carolina prisons, they're everywhere. They're very present. I heard y'all talking a bit about the logistics of him getting one while he's on administrative segregation. Yeah, it would be pretty tough for him to get one while he's on that.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. And also, it's a safety and security issue. This is a guy who's convicted of double murder,
Yeah.
and also swindling dozens and dozens of people, financial crimes. He hasn't been convicted of those yet, but the last thing you want someone like this to have is contact with the outside world, because let's be honest, a lot of the people that come in contact with this convict wind up dead or getting hurt. So in my eyes, he shouldn't have any contact with the outside world unless it is, for his defense or so forth. But there is a Bill of Rights, right, that inmates get. And Connie and Anthony, you guys talk about this all the time. My audience and everybody that watches flips out when they hear about, well, they should have access to this and that. Listen. I guess, is there a nationwide standard when it comes to communication and so forth? What is convict Murdaugh going to have as far as when he gets settled in? And then I'm going to go to you first, Anthony. What do you think he's going to get as far as, he talks about this canteen and putting money on the books and so forth. What's it going to be for this guy? Is he going to be able to get approved visitors? And I think that we talk about this in previous live streams. Can you just give the audience a little overview on someone who's serving 2 life sentences? What happens when years go by, 2 years, a year and a half from now, when he's settled in? How does it go?
Well, once he's been fully classified, even if he's PC, he still has to have the privileges of a general population inmate. They have to keep things fair, because technically he may be in PC by choice or he may be in PC not by choice. But either way, he has to be given the same privileges that GP inmates get, which would include phone calls. Even if they do visits could either be in person, by phone, or sometimes even have non-contact visits through Windows. But again, the big thing here is whatever's offered to GP, he is going to have to be able to get those same type of offers, education, whatever it is. Now, the funny thing is, where it becomes a concern is not all inmates want to be in PC, but then administration may feel that they need to be in PC. So now we not only have to justify why they have to be in there, but we have to now take note that they're getting all their privileges, which could include something as simple as marking out how many minutes he gets out of cell time, to make sure that, if the lawyers get down and say, I know, but he's not in solitary. He's, he is being allowed these types of privileges. But yes, if he's in PC, regardless, because again, it's non-punitive. He's in PC because it's for protective reasons. You have to give him all the privileges that he would get as if he was in general population. So it's tough, because not all facilities that have PC, because when you got to manage an inmate that's PC, remember that costs the state a lot of money, because that individual inmate has to be specially managed and treated at different, like, they can't go out to yard with other inmates, whatever it is. So in the process of doing this all, you have to really manage everything. I mean, from when they get out of their cell, and it becomes very complicated. We don't want the inmate in PC, but for him like this, he probably has to be.
And we're using these acronyms, but or these
Protective custody.
Protective custody is what we're talking about here. Now, there's been conversations, and Connie, you might be able to speak on this. Alex Murdaugh, again, Alex, however you want to pronounce it. Let's say convict Murdaugh. He's had the known drug addiction to oxycodone. He said it at his trial. He's a heavy drinker, maybe arguably an alcoholic. We don't know. But he did go to detox before he got collared and locked up. So he was in a detox. That was his way of running away from this thing. And he went to detox, and then they picked him up after he detoxed and locked him up. And he's been in since then. What kind of steps does the infirmary or medical at these facilities, whether it's local, jail, while he was on trial, what steps do they take to manage if this guy starts, relapsing or gets something slipped to him? Because listen, Pablo shows some videos too where you can get a lot of goodies inside prison, and people are like, oh,
hell no.
Oh, hell yeah. So what happens if a guy like this gets a hold of some oxy or some kind of stuff inside? What does medical do, Connie?
So we can never sort of completely combat the black market of prison, right? Like that inmate subculture exists and it's not going anywhere, right? But the reality is that when someone has an addiction issue, whether it's drugs or alcohol, whatever that is, we usually try to keep them in some level of treatment, and whether that's medical, mental health, substance abuse treatment, if that person, because the cravings don't go away, right? And so that person is probably going to be monitored on a regular basis to kind of check in, right? To see where they are. And of course, there's this effort to constantly give them tools to help them stay clean. But the reality is that if he wants to get his hands on something, right, he's going to find a way to get that. And I'm certainly, once he moves out of PC, if he moves out of PC, we'll probably see some things kind of happening, right? But it is on medical and mental health and custody for that matter, right? Because custody in the housing unit would be able to see if a guy is starting to decompensate or something seems off with them. And even though they might not be able to pinpoint what that off thing is, once they're assessed or evaluated by medical or mental health, typically we're able to identify what this individual might be going through. So the treatment doesn't stop just because detox happened.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to ask Pablo, I mean, you're listening to some correction professionals here from the Northeast. Is that what you experienced in South Carolina? Because I've been following, within the last day or two, some of the things that you've been posting, and it seemed like you were saying like they do basic medical. It's not like they're paying that close attention to the inmate population. Did I get that wrong, or am I on the money about that?
Real quick, it's honestly the first time I've gotten to hear, perspectives from correctionals officers, when I've always been on the other side. So it's really interesting. So I can appreciate that hearing from y'all. But when I was, in my videos, when I was talking about the thoroughness of the medical evaluation, I was being more specific to what he, I think I was reacting to a video of a guy, Larry Levine, who was talking about, how that's going for him at Kirkland, which he hasn't been to. And I've been through that medical process there. I've been there twice. And, it's not the most thorough thing. I mean, I'm sure it's, it's what you get at a doctor's checkup. I mean, they throw the stethoscope on you and, look in your ears and check your blood pressure and, all the usual things. And they're going to ask you, do you have any, is there anything that you think we need to pay more attention to? And, if you say no, then, that's, they'll get your height and weight for the record and ask if you take any prescription medication. And if you do, they'll check the medical records and make sure you get that. But other than that, that's about the extent of it. Now, if there's something specific, later on in your time and something happens. I mean, if we're talking about taking drugs and, something goes wrong with that, or you get injured physically from some violence or something, I mean, then they'll give you the proper attention.
Right. Hey, Connie.
Yeah, I think the only difference though is that someone at his level, they would be monitoring him more closely because he's under high scrutiny, right? And so while maybe there could be some routine things that kind of get glossed over, if it's just, your normal intake, in these circumstances where you have a high profile individual coming in who's openly talked about their addiction, who we know he has other medical issues, we've seen a visible weight loss, there may be some additional efforts made to make sure that he's medically stable while he's in there, because under no circumstances from a medical perspective or mental health perspective do we want someone to decompensate and we didn't take some sort of action, right? Because then that in of itself becomes another situation that the state, I'm sure, wouldn't want to have to deal with.
And let me ask, Pablo, so you may know this better than I would. So we got COVID. So when they come from the county, usually transfers between states, they're not going through the quarantine process. But would he go through that going from county to state? Would he have to spend 10 days? Are they still doing the COVID protocol?
As far as him going into the intake part, I couldn't for sure tell you, because, you go through intake at the start. So, that for me, that was back in 2015. COVID, I could only talk about what happened where I was at when it came along. So, I don't exactly know how they did it at Kirkland. But, where I was at, I could, talk about that.
Because you were there, or you were in custody throughout the whole pandemic, correct?
Yeah. I was, I've been there for, most of my whole time there, and I was on my way out really when it started, because I got released January of 2021. So it was right there at the end, and I wasn't at Kirkland. So I don't know exactly how they January
22 or January 21?
21.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right.
No, I'm sorry. 20. You're right. 21.
22. I was going to say,
I got released on New Year's Day. So it went from December 31st,
21 to 22.
So,
yeah. So I was thinking, my old mind that I screwed up and wrote it down wrong, because I glanced to my left here and I said January 2022. And I was like, wait a minute, this old bastard.
But they, where I was at, they did come around and, they'll come cell to cell and they'll take your temperature. And if your temperature is showing that it's high, then they'll give you, they'll take those inmates who have a high temperature and they'll give you a COVID test. And if it comes back, they'll take you from that yard and send you to a specific yard. I believe it was Lee County. And they have a special section there. They made a special section there for people who need to quarantine for 14 or so days.
Hey, listen, I want to show a quick clip. I'll give us all a break if anybody needs to take a bathroom break or get a drink. I want to play this. This is about South Carolina, the Knives Cell Phone Drugs Rapid Response Team. They do these searches in South Carolina prisons looking for illegal items. And they do these. They do this periodically and obviously unannounced. We're going to talking about the convict Murdaugh and his safety inside any state correctional facility. I think you had mentioned there was 2 or 3 max facilities where he could possibly be going to. Am I wrong on that, or is there many more? Because there's 22 total.
I believe there's more level 3s. He'll definitely go to a level 3 because of what his sentence is. But I don't, there's more than 3 though. Yeah.
There's total of 22 correctional facilities, which I don't know. Is that a lot, Connie, Anthony, for South Carolina?
No, I mean, you got, California's got, she's from New York, got over 50, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. The state of New York has over 50. So,
right.
And plus, guys, to be honest with you, populations has dropped a lot. Criminal justice reform, the mass release during COVID when we were just sending everybody out because of the pandemic.
Right. Yeah. There was that mass ship out that Rikers did. They emptied out part of some of the facilities and let people go.
That's a whole show in itself.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's play this little piece and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. This is about inmates and homemade weapons and the search for them.
Now to a story that keeps corrections officers very busy, and that's contraband. Despite ongoing efforts to keep it out of state prisons, inmates always manage to get it inside. With that said, search teams work full-time to rid the prisons of those illegal items. Just days ago, I was invited to witness an early morning contraband crackdown at the Kershaw Correctional Facility in Lancaster County.
This is going
Here's
to be
what we saw.
eye-opening.
Only minutes into the contraband crackdown,
59 contraband.
and officers make the first discovery of the day. But it wasn't found by the team. Instead, an inmate gave it up.
So this is a homemade weapon that the inmates can make out of metal they get out of the cell or somewhere in the institution. It's commonly known as a shank here in the prison.
An inmate threw that out
Out of a cell, yes.
when they saw us coming.
Yes, correct.
Dexter Lee has been with the Corrections Department nearly 30 years now. How often do you find that sort of contraband on an inmate?
Well, anytime we do searches, we'll find it. I mean, this depends on, which institution is more prevalent to more contraband than others, but it's a regular basis. I mean, contraband is always a continuous battle we face.
Contraband in here.
Okay. Let's see we'll find out what he found. What is it? Tobacco, okay.
Well, over the past several years, the State Corrections Department has cracked down on contraband, specifically cell phones. On this day, officers searched 64 cells. They found 46 cell phones and 41 chargers. State Prison Director Brian Sterling says inmates use those phones to commit more crimes behind bars.
You name it, from continuing to deal drugs. If they're a sexual predator, they can continue that. They can scam the military, as we've seen. They can try to have murders committed, as we saw with Captain Johnson. He's from Sumter, South Carolina. A contraband cell phone was used to order a hit on Captain Robert Johnson back in the late 2000s, 2009, 2007, I think it was, where he was shot 5 or 6 times point blank range because he was doing the very job that you saw our officers and staff doing on Monday.
During this search, the rapid response team is looking for any and all contraband.
I got it.
Anything from drugs, illegal drugs, or if they house on like prescription pain medication that someone gets from medical access property. We look at stuff they shouldn't have. They have a standard list of items they can't have. So if it's excessive, whether I go from uniforms or mattresses or anything like that. And of course, into the legal stuff is drugs or any type of weapon as well. Weapons can vary, from small shank like we charge to sometimes even larger shanks, metal stuff that they make from anything that they can find from inside the prison.
It's dangerous for our employees. It's also dangerous for other folks who are incarcerated there. So that's why we go and do these sweeps. But what they can do, if there's anything metal or they can get their hands on anything, there are some people that can and will make weapons out of those things. And we try to do what we can to stop that. But you can't build prisons without metal. So we have to go in.
So I wanted to stop it there and ask my guests. First, I'll go to you, Pablo. How much of this is running rampant in facilities that you were in? Was there a lot of cell phones, a lot of weapons, a lot of drugs? Is convict Murdaugh going to be able to get his oxy pills in behind the bars?
Of course, it varies from yard to yard, but yeah, it's always, it's going to be present. Just like she said, it's just a game of, sometimes they catch you getting it in and sometimes they don't. Honestly, from my experience, they catch you more often than they don't catch you. But people are they're not going to stop trying. They have nothing else. They have nothing else, and this is all that's important for them, whether it's a way to make money or a way to get high or just help pass their time or a way to get a cell phone to do whatever they need it for. They're not going to stop, and it's they're going to keep thinking new ways, and those new ways are going to get figured out, and they're the correctional officers are going to find a way to stop that, and it's going to continue. The red team, that's the rapid response team you showed. We call it the red team because you have a burgundy team. They wear burgundy shirts also, and that's a statewide team who doesn't really work at a specific yard. They're their own team, and they'll travel around to wherever there's reported to be a problem, an excess of contraband, and they'll show up one random morning and try to catch inmates by surprise and shake down the dorms. Now, usually there's many people who look out the windows early in the morning and catch them in the parking lot gearing up and putting their equipment on before they even get started. And so they'll alert everyone. Burgundy team's on the yard, and everyone will go ahead and put their contraband up in their certain hiding spots. Now, the red team is scarier to inmates. The one we just saw, that's the red team. That's not a team that goes all over the place. The red team is made of employees on that yard. So number one, they're ready. They're able to assemble faster, and when it's made up of officers who work on that yard, they know inmates a lot better. They know who's got what. They know who's a big name on the yard. They know who's likely to have stuff, and they've been on that yard, and they know, good hiding spots get passed around word of mouth. And so if you find one in someone's cell, there's probably a lot of people using that same type of hiding spot. So they're a lot scarier. But yeah, Murdaugh, if he goes into general population, eventually, I know from what I understand, I don't want to get too off topic, but for at least the first 6 months, he'll be in administrative segregation, whether he likes it or not. Right. Todd Colehep is a high-profile case for South Carolina. He was a serial killer. They deemed him. He owned a bike shop, and they dug up a lot of bodies in his yard. He was the talk of South Carolina. He didn't have a Netflix special, but he was a big guy in South Carolina. He got kind of the same treatment. He did eventually come off after his 6-month review in front of the board, and they let him off. And that's what he predicts. When I talk to him, that's what he predicts will happen with Alex Murdaugh if he wants to come off. Now, once he comes off, I mean, it'll be just as easy as anyone else, I imagine, if he wants to.
Right, but what I question too, Pablo, is, and Connie, maybe you can chime in on this. Will Murdaugh have the option to be off protective custody, or does the warden make that decision? Who makes that decision? And I'll go to you, Connie, and then I'll go back to Anthony, because Anthony was fielding something from his stockbroker, so I had to take him off the screen. What's your thoughts on that? Does the convict make the decision, or does administration? I see you shaking your head.
So the convict doesn't make the decision, right? I mean, so I'll put it this way. If in fact he feels so strongly that he shouldn't be on there, he could, connect with his attorney and kind of have his attorney get involved to advocate on his behalf. In general, though, administration would make a decision as to whether or not this person is going to stay in protective custody or not. There could be a significant threat out there that he's not aware of because he's in protective custody, right? And so because they know what's going on in the landscape, they're not going to just make that decision just because that's what he wants. I think at the end of the day, I mean, he can't live in protective custody, right? Like, it's not going to be a forever thing. And so at some point, there is going to be a transition from protective custody into general population. And that's just, it's just the natural course of, you've been here long enough type of thing, right? Like, now, is the threat still imminent as it may have been previously? Are people really just trying to get with you to kind of just hold on to your reputation, right? Like, do they want to be associated with your crime? Like, it's all these other internal politic type stuff that just, for us, we're like, oh, this makes no sense. But, he may have some credibility, but the fact that, he's a murderer, and all the other crimes he committed may make him not as popular, right? But I think, to the point I think Pablo may have made about, him being an attorney, right? Maybe there's maybe there is that, oh, he's an attorney, he could help us, right? Like, whatever those insights he may be able to give to other inmates who are kind of going through, because there comes a point when, some of the lifers are kind of like, this is my life. Right. Yeah,
they're already sizing this guy up, right, Connie?
Yeah, and some try to figure out, like, what am I gonna do productive with my life at this time?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that may be his thing. I don't know.
So I had a couple of questions for Anthony, because now he's back.
I was going to answer the PC questions, if that's okay.
You were buying stocks over there?
Yeah. No, I got the job.
You did your job. That question's already sailed.
Well, no, there's more to that, though. Can I add that?
There's more to it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, of course, there's more. So here's what we got. When you have an inmate that's determined to be on PC, there's going to be first, you're going to have a PC hearing, or you should have a PC hearing to determine the need of the PC, which usually will come from the investigative authority, who will go ahead and give administration all they need to review, but then ultimately leave the determination up to admin for the placement. Now, if it's an involuntary placement, where the inmate doesn't want it, but you go ahead and you decide, well, the inmate needs it. They're probably going to do a hearing that could be done by a hearing officer or someone that's supposed to be objective, that looks at the facts, looks at the case, and then makes the determination if the inmate requires placement into PC or not. So you basically have the involuntary placement or the voluntary placement. Now, the inmates that are on PC should also be reviewed every 6 months or maybe yearly, but I'm thinking maybe 6 months to determine if the need for PC is still required. Now, yes, there could be inmates that are on PC for the rest of their sentence because they could be in PC for something that never changes, which could be the severity of a crime, like, again, a high profile case of a pedophile or someone that raped a child, maybe find themselves forever in PC, because even if they wanted out, administration is ultimately going to be held liable for that inmate going back into GP. I don't care even if he could be of use. So my thing here, ultimately administration does have the final say, but they do lean on a big part from the investigative authority. And lawyers, they can make requests all they want, but they'll never touch on the operations of a facility. They may try, but at the end of the day, the liability for them pushing somebody, they may come up and say, hey, listen, this person's got to get out of PC. Then you state your case. And then they'll go back and say, well, this is what he wants. But, so they don't really mess with our operations, and we need to stand by what we feel is correct.
But the bottom line is eventually Murdaugh will get out of protective custody. He's not going to stay in there for his life.
That's not always, I don't know, guys, that may not always be the case. There are certain factors that could change. I'll give you an example. You could have a gang member that leaves a gang.
I want him out of custody because I want him to get shanked.
I know, but I'm saying, but remember, we're responsible for that inmate's life. So let's say you have circumstances that change. A gang member requires PC because at a moment he left the gang, but 10 years later, no one even knows who this guy is. They'll do some reviews and they'll make a determination and go from there. But you have certain components that may never change. And also here's the other concern. All of a sudden you're doing good and a lifetime special comes on and it restarts it all over again. So it's not that, he could make use and be of value, but I would for a while, I think he could be a PC candidate until he dies.
Wow, that's interesting. Hey, I want to say hello to my co-host, Ed Wallace. He's in the chat. Hey, Ed, can't wait to get together with you maybe Saturday. I think we're going to try to do something, maybe a forensic Saturday, I'm hoping. So Ed Wallace, he just got back from a trip to India. He was teaching forensics over in India. So he travels. He's a world traveler. Somebody said something in the chat. Do correctional officers, the personnel get searched on the way in and on the way out? Anthony, can you take that in a condensed version? Yes or no?
I don't know about the way out, but definitely they should be getting searched on the way in. So yeah, they would go through a metal detector, a pat down. There should be a person
only on the way in.
You never know. We found out something new today.
What would be the purpose for going out? I think they want to control what's coming in. So that makes sense. And Pablo agrees. So let's play this piece. This is a quick piece about a correctional officer getting locked up. And I think it was in Kirkland. So let's take a listen to this.
Correctional officer working at Kirkland Correctional Institution in Columbia has been arrested. He's 25-year-old Dalton Manning. According to warrants, he's charged with attempting to introduce contraband into the prison after he concealed a cell phone and 2 packages of tobacco in his belongings. Investigators say when the contraband items were discovered, Manning abandoned his duty station and fled the facility.
He ran away. He ran away and got fucking collared. What a piece of shit. I guess this is what happens in all trades, right? You have bad cops, you got bad correction officers, you got bad doctors, you got bad lawyers, who's now a convict in serving 2 life sentences. There's good and bad in everything, folks. So if you think that everything is honky-dory, it's not. And the chances are, if Murdaugh gets out of protective custody, those shanks that we just showed there and all that contraband, he now becomes a target unless he's playing nice. And he seems to be a manipulative person, so he's going to use his lawyer skills to win over friendships with his bunkmates or anybody who he comes in contact with, because he's a master manipulator. That's what he's done all his life, and he will continue to do that behind a wall inside. But I wanted to ask you, Pablo, quickly. You did say in one of your videos, I caught that there are some of your friends, some of the folks who you kept in contact with, they're waiting for this guy, right? Not waiting to jump him and beat him, but waiting for him to make entry and to be out and about wherever he goes. Any thoughts on that, Pablo? How that could go?
Yeah. As far as for his charges and what he did, and him being high profile, from who I've talked to and just my experience, he's not going to get shanked for that.
Murdering his son? Murdering his son?
Yeah, I mean, anyone I've talked to, people have done just as worse or just as bad or worse. I mean,
gotcha.
the thing that gets in a place where you can't really judge another person, the only thing that gets you judged is if you molest children. And they keep those guys together in a separate part of the prison. So you never see those guys. Other than that, if there can always be an exception. There can always be a guy who's, he can't take it. He's having a bad day and he just feels so personal about, the fact that he did that to his kid and to his son and has nothing to lose and he could go do that. Yeah. It's not impossible, but I just don't see it likely. I see it more likely if something was to happen to him when he goes into general population, it would be because of either his mouth or his attitude or the way he conducts himself with these other guys, that's the more likely thing. But these guys, they're not so much about justice. If it's just you murdered someone, even if it's your kid and your wife, it's not so much about that. It's, how are you going to make my life better? My life sucks.
Right.
How are you going to make it better?
If he would have murdered a baby, would that have been a little different?
I think it would have been different. Yeah. And in as much sense as it may not make, I think it would have made a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what a lot of people.
That's just the fine line that can make a difference to these guys.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people want to know, because that's the chatter out there on social media, online. Is he going to get his day? Is he going to get, are they going to take care of him in there? But like you said, he's just another guy in there doing time, and where he's going to be. And according to what our professionals said here, and also what they're gonna put him in the place that suits most, that fits him most, right, guys and girls? They're gonna suit him in a spot where he's gonna be amongst folks that have committed similar crimes and are facing similar penalties. They're not gonna put him in a place where someone's doing 5 years, or I guess that's what this 45-day evaluation period is about. And some people don't really have a good grasp of that, and they just think, well, it's just a random thing, and they're just like, okay, next we'll put him here and we'll put him there. There's a lot of thought that goes into the process of placing an inmate. And I see Connie shaking her head. That makes me feel good when I see her shaking her head, because she's agreeing. I want to get to the questions because we're almost at the hour. And listen, I want to remind everybody, Anthony has a YouTube channel as well, Tier Talk, where him, Anthony, and Russ was supposed to join us tonight, but he backed out at the last minute. He said that he was trading on the Hang Seng and he was trying to make millions. So he wasn't able to come because he had some big trades to make over on the Hang Seng. So Russ, we'll catch you next time. I have a sheet of questions. I always put on my little preview, hey, send in questions to DutyRon.com. And holy shit, I have 2 full pages of questions. So I wrote down 9 of the top questions. And I'm going to go through them, and I'm going to rapid fire these so we can get through them quick. So Julie asks, and she's from the UK, she says, can Murdaugh have visitors while in this transition phase? Now I'm going to go to you, Pablo, because you're going to be the best to answer that question.
Technically, while at Kirkland, where he's being evaluated, you can. But before you can have a visitor, they have to be approved onto your visitation list. That takes several weeks. And by the time, if you were able to get someone approved during that time, it's likely just about time for you to be sent out of there into the next prison. So while you're there, it's very rare if you're going to be there long enough to get a visit.
Wow. Amazing. Look at Schmitty. Schmitty, who's a good friend of Crime Time with DutyRon, and thank you for answering that, Pablo. She's a friend of Crime Time with DutyRon and Police Off the Cuff, and she goes, "Oh my God, time flies. I hate that on every stinking show here and on Police Off the Cuff. I never want it to end." What a freaking! Can I use that as as like a testimonial on my website? That's a freaking great.
That's a 5-star review.
Yeah, exactly. Could you put that on Yelp, for crying out loud? Purple Grits says DutyRon is a great host. Some people say I suck at it, but I try to do the best, Erica. And it just freaks me out that if you're in there and you are, addicted or had addiction to heroin and prescription drugs, that this is readily available, it just freaks me the fuck out. And I just don't know, like, how do we rectify this? How does this get changed? Anthony, you seeing a lot of this? You're an executive in the correction industry. What could be done to put a stop to this?
So I've worked at 5 facilities, highest level of max. I mean, I've worked over PC for about a year as well, protective custody. I've worked with some famous inmates on Netflix, including Charles Cullens and The Hitchhiker.
Right.
So it's tough. I mean, so it's about being resourceful. Even if you have inmates that are still close custody, I mean, the more you take away, the more innovative they become. And their mind is always going to be on how to make things easier. And sometimes they think outside of the box. The most we could do is once we catch it, we get on point and we don't do it that way again. But, when you have people that don't have nothing, they're going to find ways to get something in some of the most inventive ways. I mean, I've seen it where there's no way you could go to work thinking that something like this can happen, and it happens. And then it's like, wow, then you got to go back and revisit everything. So again, I think the big thing here is the more limits you put somebody on, the more they go into survival mode and the more resourceful they become. And again, we have to be on point, but we also don't live there 24 hours a day. So the mindset isn't the same.
But people in the chat are just going after the guards now, the correction officers. I don't even like to call them guards. People are saying that in the chat. These are correction officers, right? Inmates that get visits, people bring this stuff in. So let's not put this complete blame game on the drugs and contraband that come into facilities on our great men and women. Yeah. So Pablo,
Thanks,
you want to take that over? How is this, Pablo?
I would say the guards are responsible for the least amount of contraband that comes in. I mean, guards, like you see, the times where you can get a guard to bring something in, sometimes they get caught. Guards are not going to really do that. If they do, that's very rare, and they're going to be bringing in something very small, something they feel comfortable that they can absolutely get away with. So that it's not the guards. It's they're getting people that they know. They'll find someone who is from this area, whatever prison they're at, whoever's here on the yard, and hey, I'm from this area. I know people here. Let me get on your phone. I'll call somebody or get on Facebook, talk to my guy. I'll get him we'll send him money on Cash App. He'll go out to the store and he'll get a pound of loose tobacco, some cell phones, $30 cell phones, some drugs, duct tape it all up into what they call a bomb. And I'll get him to come through the woods at night about 3 a.m. and he'll throw it over the fence. And so they put up these like 50-foot, 100-foot, I don't know, super tall nets that no one could throw something over. And so the inmates put all their money together and got drones. And I mean, it just, like I said, it just continues. They figure a way to stop it, and the inmates figure a way around it, and then they figure a way to stop it. It's not the guards; it's the inmates finding ways around stuff.
You know what's scarier than physical contraband too? So like when you have a corrupt officer or a corrupt staff member, sometimes you may not know, and then you're talking around them, and they pick up information. So I mean, a big thing with inmates is knowledge. you can't catch me at the metal detector with all the knowledge I have about other officers. And then once I become corrupted, it's like pillow talk. I'm just giving out all this information, and the inmates, knowledge is power in that world. That's why even with us behind the wall, sometimes we're very selective in sharing our information, because you never know who's under the thumb of an inmate.
And the use of drones is mind-blowing, but it's not out of the realm, because this is part of modern day technology, and this is what people are using. Connie, for us here, we think of how's somebody going to drone something into Rikers Island? But it's possible. You could do that now with this type of technology. And if somebody's out in the rec yard, and that's the next question, how much rec time can Murdaugh get when he's at this facility and when he gets to his landing facility? Anthony, you talked on previous shows about an hour. Is that the standard of what somebody in his position is going to get, or does people get extra rec time? Does that count for library? Does that count for if he goes to prayer services and so forth, and AA meetings? Do they have all this stuff in prison?
So there's been push recently, the ICRA, Isolation Confinement Restriction Act. So basically, there are certain times when you can highly restrict inmate movement. Let's say investigative housing for an inmate if they have to investigate in something, some type of temporary close custody or administrative housing. But for the most part, you do have to comply with what you call out of cell time, which would include, let's say, an hour rec. If you get some staff that's a little sneaky, they may count like phone time if it's out of the cell, or kiosk. But technically, for the most part, some places it's a little crazy. Like if you have a protective custody, which requires, one inmate being moved at a time, they may expect that one inmate to get 4 hours a day. It's not going to happen. You don't have enough staffing and enough layout to do that. So minimal, you want to at least do 5 a week, with one being outside. But having said that, it's not always feasible. It depends on the layout and the staffing. But
check this out. I had a conversation with Pablo. We did a little testing before we went live, and to make sure all his stuff was good. And I just made a quick comment to him, like, how much rec time did you get while you were over in Kirkland, and during the course of your time? And he made a statement to me that blew me away. He was like, I barely saw the outside. Pablo, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah. You barely see the outside. Not only like, they'll put metal plates over the windows to where you don't get sunlight. And that's to combat inmates who get in the windows and try to spot their guy out in the woods to try to communicate and coordinate this contraband getting thrown over. But also because inmates would get contraband, when it's thrown over, it's got to go somewhere and it's got to get picked up sometime. Usually that's going to be on rec. So they just quit giving us rec. And then when COVID came along, that was the perfect excuse not to give us rec. Of course you can at the start, but once it started dying out, they never got back to it. I believe in my last year, we were allowed to go out to rec 2 times during that whole year. And, like he said, they're supposed to give us a certain amount of time, but that doesn't mean they do it. And you can't really hold it on the staff to comply with that and give us that time that we're supposed to get, because all they'll do is be like, okay, we'll do that, but kind of unspoken, passive aggressive, whatever you want to call it. We'll crack down on the frequency of these contraband searches, and we'll come, basically we're going to come get your cell phones and your drugs a little more often if you're making us do all this, and you want to like play hardball and make us do this, and we got to let you out that. Well, then we'll do that, and we'll start getting your phones and just things like that. It's a balance. So inmates they're not really going to push that to get that rec.
That's a very good point, Pablo, because I know for us, so like when you work in a maximum security facility, it's not that easy to do cell searches, because some of these inmates could be in their cell for many years because there's so much of a threat to just easily pull them out. But once they go to yard, if they choose to go to yard, that could be open game to do some searches in their cell. So a lot of them also choose not to leave because they know that once they leave, their area could get searched.
So his world is basically is going to be completely not to what he is used to. He's used to living in a lap of luxury. This is a guy who is, in command and control of everything that he did on the outside. And now that script is flipped. He now is being told when to eat, when to shit, when to, do everything is controlled.
When to pee.
Yeah, when to pee, when to, and Pablo, you talked about not talking during eating at the when you go and eat. I mean, that blew my mind. I don't know if Anthony and Connie, you heard that, but on one of his videos he did, he said that at Kirkland Correctional, you get a cup issued, a state issued cup and a spork, and you go and you eat, and you're not allowed to talk to anybody.
I mean, I've seen that. So when I was out in Rikers, in the corridors, they were not able to speak while in passing. And that changed over time. So I want to say that was probably back in 2000 when I first started. But I think there's that level of trying to maintain how much information or control how much information is being passed during those opportunities when they get to encounter each other, right? Because when they're incarcerated, most of the movement is controlled movement, right? And so to have someone being able to like be, at chow having just open conversation about whatever is probably not what you want to happen, but I've not heard that at chow, so that's a good insight.
I want to clarify that that's not at every yard. That's just at Kirkland when you're first getting in, and I think it's part of just they're extra hard on you at that yard, probably just get you, break you in maybe.
Right.
Yeah, there's I know during COVID we kind of did away a little bit with centralized feeding. Centralized feeding. Sorry, that's what it is. Where inmates will meet in a mess hall and eat together. So now a lot of this, we would do it cell by cell at that point. But now a lot of facilities are starting to go back to the centralized feeding, bringing the inmates out. But I've never been on a facility. I mean, we don't even have assigned seating technically, because most of the time, to be honest with you, some places still do this and I'm against it, but some places don't because of technology. I don't see a reason why an officer has to stand directly in mess when there's ways that you can monitor stuff from a distance and have a controlled response. But once they remove the officers from mess, which I think is the safety thing, because again, you don't want them just in that area where they're, definitely vulnerable. You're not going to sit there and control where they sit and who they talk to. It's just, you got other things you got to worry about at that point, and I don't want to start things up. I'm by myself, so the last thing I want to do is say, hey, Joe, you can't talk to John. And next thing you know, we're rioting because of something stupid at that point. You got to kind of pick and choose your battles at some point. Like, do I want to chase after this and get killed, or maybe figure out an alternative?
Right. Hey, I want to just show, this is the correctional facility. I want to just go in on this full screen. Just give me a second. Of course I had it set up and now it's playing tricks with me. But let me read this last question because this is directly to Pablo, and I want him to. I don't want to miss this one because I think this is an important question. It comes in from Janice, and Janice says, "DutyRon, can you ask this directly to your guest, Pablo? What do you think can be done to prevent or lessen juvenile crime and stop them from continuing criminal activities from your perspective, being that what you've been through? Do you have any advice for the youth out there? Thank you, and please."
I mean, it's hard to say, I'm not an expert on that, but I can say for me, I've been to prison twice technically, but the first time I was 19 and they have something called the Youthful Offender Act. And it's to give you a second chance when you're young and it's your first felony. And that's what I got. And it's, you go to prison, but it's more of like all the youth are together and it can be for about, 4 to 6 months. And, as much as I think the not just throwing the book at them their first time is, that's good. It also, for me, it wasn't enough to teach me a lesson. 10 years was enough. Not that you should give 10 years to youth, but it's, I don't know. It wasn't enough to wake me up. And then on top of that, it's like the youth, like I don't know, maybe these guys they look up to who are, ending up in prison, and they're, doing what they do to end up in prison, and they want to do that and follow that. And it's like, I get around those same guys who they're looking up to, and I'm around them after they've caught their 10, 15, 20, 30, 40. I've seen 17-year-olds get 40 years, and once they get that, if they could talk to them, they would say, this is all for nothing. This is all bullshit. This was not worth it. It's like it doesn't set in until that happens, and all you can do is try to tell them that message. But then when you have these speakers come and talk to these kids, like at high schools or something, it doesn't hit, and they just look at you like, this old guy's coming to tell me about, this and that. And I don't know, it makes it difficult to find a balance between all of that,
Yeah, it's a tough question because, like you said, you're not a counselor, but you've been through it, and I think that was part of the motivation of that question, is that maybe there was some type of some type of words for the youth out there, because at 19, 20, you were a teenager going into your young adult life, and you spent those precious years from 20 to 30 locked up. Yeah. So I think that was the motivation for that question. What we're looking at here is a overview of the facility where Murdaugh is, and you and I went over this. It's broken down into all these different sections, and this is the back section that we talked about, where you want to just describe a little bit for the audience.
Those buildings right there are where the permanent inmates, the ones who aren't being under, they're not under evaluation. They didn't just get there. When you're under evaluation, and then you get sent to a yard, basically these inmates didn't get sent to a yard. They decided they'd stay on this one, and this would be the prison yard they served their time on. So those are the buildings that house them. And if you go to these brick buildings over here to the top right.
Okay, I'm trying to get this.
Okay. Yeah, that's where the permanent inmates who are going to stay on that yard are, those
right
big green buildings. Now, all those brick buildings, all of those in that little, heart shape, those are where the inmates who are coming in to be evaluated are.
And these look like older style buildings that were probably built in the 70s when this place was, 1975 on the website, it says. And do these buildings here have like basements as well?
Yeah. When you go in, there's a downstairs. When you go in that little, that building in the middle of these.
Okay. Yeah. Right here.
These, you go in there, you can go to the right or the left, and there is a downstairs, and then there's the upper part. Some of these are specifically for, like I said, the youthful offenders. They got a building specifically for them. They have a building for just a certain age and up. And then they have like the 25 to 35 dorm, so they're kind of divided up by that. And then they also have the, the administrative segregation dorm, which is like the PC dorm.
Wow. Yeah, it's an interesting facility because it's large and there's many different buildings. If somebody was just looking at this, they would be like, wait a minute. And then you see lots of wooded area that borders here, and there's houses. If you look, beyond this, it looks like farms and houses. I don't know if that's part of the state corrections property, but this is a massive piece of corrections. I mean, here's a big overview of it. It goes from all the way over here. It starts right here by this Right Direction Church, and then it works its way all the way down, and there's buildings all over the place here. So this is a massive place, and to handle 8,000 inmates, to process them, you need a place like that. But again, this has been a really interesting hour and a half. I went actually hour and 20. I always wind up owing Connie overtime. Her rate is like $1,500 an hour. So it breaks the bank every time with me. And Anthony always says, you don't have to pay me, Ron. I'm good. You just give it to Connie. But I want to thank you guys for taking out an hour and change to hang out with us. And if you guys are new, just stumbling across this live stream, please consider subscribing to Crime Time with DutyRon. Jumpsuit Pablo and Tier Talk with Anthony Gangi. Connie and Anthony, they are the dynamic duo, and they have some great guests that come on with them. Connie, you want to talk a little bit about Civilian Corrections Academy and so forth?
Yeah, sure. So, as you guys know, I've been here for quite some times now. So the academy essentially is for non-uniform staff who work in the correctional environment. Not all states are able to provide civilian-specific training to their staff. So, after 20 plus years as Prison Health Services Administrator, I decided to create a curriculum to help individuals who transition, who work in facilities, to actually be prepared for the reality of working in prison. So some insights into inmate subculture, inmate manipulations, just being able to maintain professional boundaries, I would say, and essentially allowing them to have safe and successful careers in corrections, as opposed to it being just a, I'm going to work here for a little bit and then I'll move on, right? And so the academy is now, I think we're in 26 states, and we continue to grow. And it's absolutely been received pretty well. And I was talking to Anthony a little earlier about, here we are talking about going back into facilities. And so there's a possibility that I might be at a facility, some state near someone, who knows, but it's been going well. And I'm happy to be able to contribute in a positive way to the institution so that, people can be safe and we can kind of work through these things that we had to learn firsthand.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's an invaluable, resource. And I commend you for continuing, after your service in corrections, continuing on with helping out the civilians in the corrections field. Anthony, you want to talk about your show, Tier Talk? What do you guys do there? I know you and Connie get together all the time, but what do you got in the pipeline? I see a book behind you, Inmate Manipulation Decoded.
Well, that's written, that's been out there. That's used for training all across the country with correctional staff, including the leadership book. So Tier Talk's been around for over a decade, pretty much. It's used for training all across the country. It gets me to speak at a lot of conferences. This year, I actually held back a little bit on the conferences because I'm part of a committee with my commissioner, which I think is amazing. It's called CEMI, and it stands for the Committee of Employee Morale and Innovation. So our job right now is to lift the knowledge workers, the frontline voices up, to make sure they're heard and to build a staff that feel invested in the work that they do. So we're going around working with the new recruits, mostly trying to set up a culture that allows for this level of interaction. And also, I'll be on TV, landed a TV show a little bit, so we'll talk about that more when
you have to get your autograph, man. Don't forget me when you become big, and me and Pablo. Don't leave us in the dust.
I'll have all you guys come on. We'll have fun. We'll come to the sets up in Manhattan, but we got some time.
Awesome, as long as the transportation and everything is taken care of.
I'll pick you up personally, Ron.
Oh boy. Robbie from Australia says he follows both Jumpsuit Pablo and DutyRon. I hope, Robbie, you consider following Tier Talk as well. And thank you for the support. Thank you for becoming a channel member and all that good stuff. And if I missed any of the super chats, I think Kristen sent one and she said, here's a super chat for 5 extra minutes.
Wait, what?
Yeah, she sent in a super chat so we can go for extra minutes. Pablo, tell everybody about what you got going on, TikTok and YouTube, all linked in the description.
Well, I feel funny when, you got it's a brilliant book idea, the inmate manipulation. And then I'm here to talk, my TikTok, but
listen,
it's all good. It's success. You're making a difference.
Equal opportunity guy.
Yeah, but I mean, that it's just me. If you like to join the TikTok, there's more comedy over there. I'm not on, prison stories. I like to do comedy. I like to laugh and make people laugh. And that's kind of what got me my platform. I don't really get on there and talk about what a tough inmate I was. You know, nobody wants to hear that. So I'm usually the one getting beat up. So it's pretty fun stuff. Go check it out. And if you want, you know, the YouTube, it's also on YouTube. You should check me out there. And I do a lot more stuff like this on YouTube, just kind of going into my side of, you know, just the prison experience and stuff. And then, you know, Alex Murdaugh, stuff like that. So just check it out, you know.
Yeah, you're at a really great channel because there's a whole bunch of different things on it. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to just play this little short clip. This is you interviewing people in South Carolina about Murdaugh.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's funny, but I think some of the questions that you ask and the answers that you get are pretty cool. So
Okay.
let's play this if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I don't know where he's got a mind or not.
What do you think's going through his head right now?
Nothing good. I don't know, man. That's gotta suck. Probably getting his ass whooped every day. He's got to be thinking about that.
If he don't finish his punishment down upon this earth, you ought to finish it for him.
I think he's thinking he ruined his fucking life, and that all that hunting and all that law firm shit is out the window. He's done so.
If I were there, I'd be thinking 2 life sentences. So I gotta die, be resurrected, and then come back around again and be like, oh man, I gotta die again. This sucks.
Well, I think him being a lawyer, he's probably thinking, oh, I can probably find my way out of this. Maybe I'll appeal it. Maybe I'll figure out, you know, some way to get out of this situation, because that's probably what he's done his whole life. I'm sure reality is probably hitting him pretty hard right now.
And we know a lot of people with high profile cases like Alex Murdaugh. A lot of times when they go to prison, they may get a lot of letters from the public, a lot of fan mail. Do you think he'll get any of that in there, or none at all?
I think he'll get some, definitely.
Yeah, dude. Modern day chicks are super weird about that shit. They think it's hot. a lot of weird stuff.
I think his name.
He said modern day chicks are super weird about that stuff. So it was great. You were out on the town asking people what they thought about what happened here and the verdict, right? It was after the
verdict.
That
was in downtown Greenville, South Carolina. Just tried to get a good bit of people, see what they thought. Everyone had a little bit different opinion, but yeah, that was pretty fun.
And you got a young girl, I think, at one point. I'm trying to find it. So it looks like it was like
it's in that same montage right there where you were at. It'll
where the hell is it?
It was on that same.
She's next. Let me put this on because you ask her about the fan mail, and then we'll wrap the show up with the fan mail because that's a whole nother sticking point that people get frustrated over. All of these creeps get a lot of the fan mail when they get locked up like this for life. So, but here, let's listen.
How big this case is and who he is, 100%. Whether it's positive fan mail or negative fan mail, I think he'll get something for sure.
There's got to be some ladies out there. I know that normally when that happens, I feel like the person being convicted is somebody who is, you know, pretty attractive, and so that's what brings in a lot of that fan mail because it's like.
So
you know,
is Alex Murdaugh attractive enough? Is Alex Murdaugh attractive enough to bring in that kind of fan mail?
In my opinion, no. But like I said, you never know. There's plenty of ladies out there, and he could be their exact type.
So you would not be writing him any fan mail?
Personally, no. I would not be writing him any fan mail.
I think whenever they send letters to people
great.
like...
I love it. So guys, go over to subscribe to his YouTube channel. Like I said, it's linked down in the description. I want to thank all 3 of my guests from the bottom of my heart for taking out the time to educate the audience here at Crime Time with DutyRon. This is what makes this a great place, is professionals like yourselves that volunteer your time to give that in layman's terms what goes on behind the wall. The men and women in the corrections field across our great country, they risk their lives day in and day out. And it's not just the correction officers, it's the civilians like Connie who work inside these facilities and risk their lives day in and day out to keep the street safe and to keep the bad guys and girls behind bars for their sentence. And then they keep them safe as best as they can. It's not a perfect job. It's not a perfect world that we live in. But yeah, listen, Pablo, Anthony, I say this to all my guests, Connie, will you guys come back again sometime soon and visit us here? And Pablo, if you need me or Anthony, you ever need me to come on, or Ed Wallace, my co-host, we'll be glad to come on to your show and give our personal perspective and professional perspective.
Yeah, sure.
All right, cool. So I want to thank
meet you guys.
Yes, yeah, it's
Good to
great
meet you,
meeting
Connie,
you.
Anthony.
Yeah.
Pleasure, brother.
I want to thank the live chatters, the replay viewers, and the moderators, especially the mod squads and all the new folks who subscribe. Again, I like to end all of these things with a little bit of a saying that I say, and it is sometimes people say, it's kind of corny what you say, DutyRon, but I say it at the end of every show, and I mean it. God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all victims of crime and their families. They need us now more than ever. We send them strength, prayers, and positive vibes, and the same goes out to everybody that was affected by this case that we're talking about. There's so many victims that are still out there that need justice. So good night from New York City. I hope everyone enjoyed the show, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace and love, guys, from Crime Time with DutyRon. Thank you. Bye, guys.